Hello, this is Jordan Terry back with Music Meeting, the podcast about all things music, where today we will be discussing censorship of explicit content in music. Now, this is a hot topic in the media nowadays, with many youth erring on the side of freedom and many adults, especially parents, erring on the side of caution. Now, and that's a fair adjustment. I think if words and imagery displaying illegal activities, using vulgar language, or referencing sexual behavior are negatively impacting our youth, especially to the extent that the media portrays, then maybe they have a point. We have to look out for the betterment of the youth, and I and many others can understand that. Parents and adults who have this idea and who have connections with kids, you just want the best for them. But what if the best for them isn't censoring certain music? Now, there's this basic idea that allowing kids to explore things, even, quote, dangerous things, is important to their learning and understanding in the world. Dr. Jordan Peterson, a professor of psychology, states in his book 12 Rules for Life that one of his rules is not bothering children while they're skateboarding, and that is important to being a successful parent and adult. Now, to break this down a little bit, the idea of not bothering children while they're skateboarding stems from the idea of letting kids play dangerously in a safe environment, letting them explore things in a way that opens them up to new experiences while still having a parent there or some sort of supervision to be there if they face the consequences of an unintended action. Now, the same thing can be true with music. If parents are there with their kids and allow them to explore something like music with different cultures, different genres, and different types of language in it, there can be a great exploration and learning experience. Now, along with this experience that may occur when listening to certain music, there are other positive impacts from the freedom to listening to different types of music. Now, I have Brendan McCarthy here, who is an undergraduate student at the University of Connecticut, to give his opinion on the issue. Now, Brendan, it's great to have you.
Honored to be here.
And I wanted to start by asking you, how do you feel about the possibility of censorship of explicit music in the future?
No, Jordan, I think it's preposterous. I think it's a dangerous road to go down. If that would ever pass, which I doubt it could, that litigation would be very dangerous. It could be brought into cinema, video games, despite there being no correlation between these things and how people actually act. It's fantasy. It's not real. Keep it separate.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think you point out the idea of there not being a line in this issue, and I think it's really hard about what line to draw and where the line should be because of the changing culture, the changing music, and as well, you mentioned cinema. There's so many different aspects to it. At what point does it change? Mean that there should be censorship. So I agree that the easiest solution is to avoid that censorship. And you bring up the idea of no correlation, which I will touch on in a little bit. But I want to ask you, how does the freedom to listen to whatever music you want impact you?
Freedom to listen has granted me the opportunity to be accustomed to a very wide variety of music and find out what I really like, but it's also spoiled me. I find the songs that I actually like, I listen to way too many times and get bored of them. And it reminds me of my mom telling me how when she was a kid, she would have to wait till her favorite song came out on the radio. It couldn't just be like on demand. So she'd get like a cassette tape and record it so she could listen to it again. So I kind of think of that story when I want to be grateful about my access to music.
Yeah, I think that we take that for granted, the freedom that is afforded to us now, and being able to listen to whatever music we want on demand with the new age of technology. Now, the final question I want to ask here is, what do you say to parents and adults who want to censor music because they're worried about the youth of America?
I would say, get a grip. How can you influence the law in this country based on your incompetency in parenting?
Okay, well, I wanted to thank you for speaking on this. Now, I want to touch on something that you mentioned during our questioning, and that is, with these things in mind, there's a study done by Eric Sprenkel and Christian End on the effects of censorship in uncensored music, sexually explicit music, on sexual attitudes and perceptions on sexual activity. They had a study of 123 people, and they tested the correlation between 3 different independent variables: censored versus uncensored music, sexual lyrics versus non-sexual lyrics, and rap music versus no music. And with these things, they measure the attitudes towards premarital sex, perceptions of pure sexual activity, and attitudes towards women. Now, they found that there was no correlation between any of these independent variables and any of the measurements that they took. Now, this is a great study and very important when looking at the censorship of music, because it looks at something like rap music, which is a genre that is often taken in a negative tone. It looks at sexual lyrics, and it looks at the effect of censorship versus non-censorship. Now, not only does it show that sexual lyrics don't have an impact, but it also shows that censored lyrics don't change the impact on the individual. It's also important to mention that something like attitudes towards women, something that many people are worried about because of certain music and certain lyrics, aren't changed. So I think that's important to mention and important to know when assessing and addressing this issue. Now, with these in mind, I want to encourage you to let your kid and the youth of America not be bothered while playing on their skateboard. Allow them to explore diverse cultures and experiences of this world through music. Thank you for joining me in the music meeting, and I want to thank my guest, Brendan McCarthy, one more time, and I'll see you next week. Have a good one.